Morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webcast here. Today we have Itamar from the product team, and he's going to be going through CA Identity Suite, the updated end of service announcements, and the upgrade path. So we are recording today's session, so we ask that you keep your lines muted. We are going to be utilizing the Q&A today for the session, so please feel free to ask your questions there. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Itamar.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Itamar Budin. I am the Senior Product Owner for CA Identity Suite. My responsibilities are around upgrade paths, upgrade experience, and overall lifecycle experience from the Identity Suite of products. I started my role 3 months ago. Before that, I was a services architect for almost 6 years working with the product. I work with a lot of customers, and I have a very deep understanding with the overall product. So what are we going to do today is I wanted to reach out to everyone and just do some sort of a refresh about some of the end of service announcements we have for the Identity Suite, especially the 12.6x branch. I would like to talk about and just put a reminder, some of the dates for the end of service, explain a little bit what is the end of service from a customer perspective, what are our options, and talk about a little bit of how fixes going to be delivered depending on which version the customer is running. Then we're going to talk about upgrade paths, which options we have to upgrade into the latest and greatest, our version 14 and 14.1 that's going to come out very soon. And we're going to leave some time in the end for some questions and answers. So exactly 6 months ago, we sent out a notification discussing about end of service for the 12.6x branch of our Identity Suite product. These include the CA Identity Manager, the CA Identity Governance, and the CA Identity Portal running anywhere with the 12.6 branch. So Identity Manager anywhere between 12.6.1 to 12.6.8, Identity Governance between 12.6.1 and 12.6.5, and Identity Portal between 1.6.0, 1.6.1, and 1.6.2. And the reason we did that because we wanted to make sure that a customer who actually implement the solution, and we understand the implementation of the solution might take a lot of time and effort, also have some sort of a good understanding how long he can use the product in its current version before he will need to start thinking about an upgrade process. And like any industry standard, we decided to go through a 3-year period of support, depending on when the solution was first released. We're gonna try to put the 3-year mark for the mainstream support, and we're gonna start notifying customers 12 months in advance about end of service notification, in some aspect even 18 months, depending on which version we are talking about. The reason we do that because we do want everyone to start thinking about migrating into the latest version, which is the 14x version. We have a 14.0 that came out a few months ago, and we are going to release a new version in the next few months, 14.1, and that's the version we will expect to see every customer working on, just because it's a much better version. In the older version, the 12.6 branch, we released a lot of service packs, a lot of fixes. There was a lot of mixed conception and confusion about which version I need to use. What if I move from one service pack to another, will I lose a feature or not? And that's something we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And so with the 14 branch, we decided to go with a different approach. So this is the announcement. For anyone who's using Identity Suite, the end of service dates are anyone who's using 12.6 Service Pack 6, October of 2019, 12.6.7, same deal, 12.6H, which is our healthy version, it's going to be April of 2019, and even the 14 version, which, as I said, just got released, where we have end of service by December of 2019. Anyone who's using Identity Manager, you're going to see that I only have the 12.6 branch here. I don't mention the 12.5 branch. And if anyone is using the 12.5 branch, the end of service date was March 31st, 2017. So anyone who's actually using it, you're right now on the end of service, and you need to discuss about either put an extended support request or thinking about an upgrade process. As you can see, anyone who's using the GA version of 12.6 up until 12 Service Pack 3, the end of service is coming pretty soon. It's in December. Anyone who's using Service Pack 4 until Service Pack 7, October of next year, 12.6.8 of April of 2019, and version 14 in December of 2019. Identity governance, we also put the same date, so to speak. We try to put the same version as we detect them in the suite, so 12.6 GA and Service Pack 1, December of this year, Service Pack 2 up until Service Pack 4, October of 18, Service Pack 5, which is the latest on the 12.6, is going to be April of 2019, and the 14 is going to be December 19. As you can notice, on a release version, I put the GA plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 10, and so on and so forth. And this is important because the version is actually dictates what type of fix strategy we actually proposing. So for example, if you're using the latest GA version, which for example for us it's the 14th branch, we're going to provide mainstream service packs and community patches. I'm going to talk about those a little bit. We're going to keep releasing service pack, and we're going to release a community patch for the service pack. So what's the difference before I go to the next slide? In the old days, the 12.6 branch, we were releasing a 12.6 service pack 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And during the late years, we start releasing also a community release. So you're probably going to have something like a 12.6 service pack 6, community release 4, community patch 6. And we decided we're not going to do that. We also want to make sure that a main version, so 14.0, which already have a Service Pack 1, only contains the feature that was released for that version. And if you move to a new Service Pack, that's a new product version. So if you decide to go with the 14 arrow, we're going to keep releasing Service Pack and community patches, which is in between Service Packs, and you're not going to lose any functionality. If you are using the GA1 and 2, which for us it's 12.6.8 and 12.6.7, I'm taking Identity Manager as an example, we're going to address only high priority business issues, for example, security patches, break fix kind of solutions. We're going to keep doing that. But the release methodology will be a little bit different. So as I mentioned before, we're going to release something called community patch. Think about it as like the same thing as Microsoft is doing every month. You get a Windows update to your machine that's containing a community patch for every single update that Microsoft has completed for the last month. We do something similar. We accumulate patches and then release them. On a specific day-to-day basis, if there's a break fix, we can provide an hotfix for individual problem, but you will need to, we will require to update to the latest community patch just to make sure that the patch is supported. We're only going to release community patches for the 14 branch, and we're going to release the old, for the old version, the 12.6 branch, we're going to release a community patch, but only for the latest community release. Think about community release as a service pack for the 12.6.8 branch, for example. Anyone who's using the GA4 and 5, upon our discretion, again, break fix, security patches, P1 issue, we will provide fixes, but again, it will require you to upgrade to the latest branch on that code you exist. So if you, for example, if you're running Identity Manager 12.6 Service Pack 8, we require to put a CR1, which is the latest CR on that branch, and as we speak right now, the CP7 is the latest code branch. So the fix will be for that CP7. In a few months or weeks, we're going to release a CP8, which is already going to contain all the fixes we provided. Anyone who's using GA6 or later, which is a very, very old version, we're not going to provide any hot fixes in terms of regular community patches or service pack. It's going to be, again, on very extreme situation. You're running a very old version, you have a break fix or you have a security fix, and again, based on discretion, we're going to put an hot fix. But again, if you're running an older version and there is a CP or CR for that version, we will require to put it in place. But also, I want to make sure that everyone understands, if we will try proactively engage customers running an older version to make sure that an upgrade process is in place, and we are willing to offer, I'm willing to offer my help and anyone else to do that. So for that, if you do have if you're running an older version, you see the end of service coming up, either it's running something that's come up in next December or on the following October, please open a support ticket if you have any questions, and we can answer any question you might have. So let's talk about a little bit of how we release the fixes, what our fix delivery definition. And by the way, all the information you see in front of you is available on the CA support side. It's an official documentation that's available for anyone. So let's talk about service pack, SPs, and cumulative release, CRs. So that's the way we're going to work from going forward. So 14.0 came out in December. We released a CR for it, and then after a while, when we saw that there's too many fixes to just treat it as a CR, we just released a service pack for it. And so the service packs only contain fixes for that version. So as opposed, as I mentioned before, as opposed to the previous version where we actually introduced some new enhancement and feature per version, that's never going to happen again. We're going to just fix anything that is broken on that specific release. So in an upgrade consideration, if you're trying to move from one version to another, just remember that you also need to make sure you apply the latest fix for that branch. And if you decide that you want to move from one version to another, for example, 14.0 or 14.1, just make sure you understand that new enhancement might be appearing in the version, and you need to make sure that it doesn't impact any business utilization you might have. Cumulative patch, as I said, it's something that we released in the older version. It's the equivalent of a service pack, so to speak, what we have right now, and we're gonna only release it for the older version. Hotfix, it's our regular day-to-day operation as we work with customers on break fixes. If you have any problem when we detect that this is a product issue, we will provide an hotfix for the version you're running on. But as a side note, we will need to make sure that you're running the latest and greatest. So as an example, I'll take the Identity Manager example again. If you are running a 12.6.8 branch of code and you're running the latest CL, but you're running on a CP4, and we need an hotfix, we will require you to upgrade to the CP7 code release, and then we're going to provide the hotfix on top of it. We do that because we don't want to start maintaining specific version per customer. It's better for you. You're going to get a better fix. You're going to get a better service. So that's the end of service and upgrade and support fix strategies. When we talk about upgrade paths, we have two options for customers who wants to move into the 14 branch. First of all, we have the virtual appliance, and I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at our documentation and presentation. The virtual appliance is probably one of the best things as a services guy I ever saw in the field. And the reason is, if we were spending even days and weeks and even months just installing a standalone infrastructure and a regular implementation, just because we were depending on a specific operating system dependency or database dependency or even an application server dependency, that time taken into the project took a lot of time, sometimes even a month to install the product. And with virtual appliance, we actually removed this all nonsense. We can set up a virtual appliance with an environment that is up and running in less than 20 minutes. And when I said 20 minutes, I mean a full clustered environment up and running, ready to go. So that represents a huge ROI for customers who are actually using an old, let's call it classical infrastructure perspective, like using a WebLogic, using a WebSphere, which you pay licenses per CPU or per machine. This way, when you use our solution, which comes pre-made with everything you need to know, everything you need. We already set up the cluster for you. We already set up the installation for you. You don't need to do anything. It's no script. And I actually have some slide I'm going to show it later, but it's a huge ROI. It's also a recommended solution. And the reason is, we talk about the fix strategy for a second. If you are running the virtual appliance, in order to apply a fix or apply the service pack, the process is pretty simple. Because the system is similar across the board, we don't need to worry about putting a specific fix for this platform or that platform. I don't need to worry about fixes for Linux. I don't need to worry about things for Windows. You have one fix for virtual appliance. It's a PGP file. You put it in place. You type a few commands in your console, and a few minutes later, it's up and running, and you're already running the latest and greatest. You also have a good indication what you're running, what got fixed. You have a good error log and change log, and that's something that helps you when you maintain your system. However, one thing I want to make sure that everyone understand is that if you are running an existing solution in a standalone configuration, what was our regular standard implementation, if you want to move into the virtual appliance, there is some changes that are being done in the infrastructure, in the design itself, for how we produce an environment, for example, in IME, that will require some changes in your solution. So any customer, for example, who is running in his user store is either database or any directory, regardless if it's CA directory, Sun directory, or Active Directory, we in the virtual appliance decide that we actually going to be a closed garden approach, meaning we're going to provide the user store, we're going to provide the schema, we're going to provide a lot of new features on top of it. For example, is a new feature called Deployment Express, which allows you to actually deploy ready-made use cases from a catalog, and for that we have to control the schema. So if anyone wants to use the virtual appliance, a requirement will be needed in order to move the data you already have in the solution into the new Identity Manager. As a side note, this is only relevant for Identity Manager. If you are using Identity Governance or Identity Portal today, there is a way to move from the standalone into the virtual appliance, but that requires some changes, which I will cover in a later stage for this presentation. If you are using the standalone, you can still go to the standalone. Nothing changed there. If you're using a 12.6 something and you want to go to 14, you can do that, but we will need to make sure that you're using the latest infrastructure as per our platform support metrics. If we are, so for example, if you have a provisioning server running a Windows 2008 R2 today, we're starting from version 14, we actually require that you run it on a 2012 R2, which require, and we understand that will require a little bit more changes, but we were willing to support in terms of how to do that and what needs to be done in order to move the data from the old version to the new version. So let's talk about the virtual appliance for a second. And what I'm going to do now is going to share the same presentation we show everyone, and we demonstrate this in CA World. And I want to talk a little bit my focus will be specifically on upgrade and benefits of using the virtual appliance. One of the biggest problems we have in the field, talking about from experience of using the solution and implementing the solution, was the fact that I mentioned this before, when we go to implement the solution in the customers, depending on what type of platform the customer chose to be on, whether it's, for example, a Red Hat machine running a WebSphere and an Oracle ROC machine 12c, that decision right there drives the level of effort of how much time it's going to take us to implement the solution. And the reason are varied. Anywhere between we have to go to work with the third-party team members from the customer perspective to get a time slot into where we actually can install the solution, because usually we don't have access, or it's just too complicated, or we even in some aspect, I was finding myself actually sitting down with the subject matter expert from the customer, sitting down and actually explain what needs to be done on the application server or the database or anything else, just to make sure that the solution is working. Then we go and install the solution, we set up the solution, and this is only one environment. Now we need to move everything to a next environment, and the process restarts again because it's the same complexity, different amount of servers, right? So the virtual appliance, first and most, will come to solve this problem. The virtual appliance, right now, it's an OVA, it's a VMware type machine. There might be a support for a future other platform in the future that you just deploy. You put an IP address, you set up a password, there's no installer, there's no script, there's nothing. It's ready-made out of the box. It takes you a few minutes just to spin up the machine. You get a nice interface. The interface is ready. It's a drag-to-drop interface. You can select, I want to select 4 servers. One of them will run Identity Manager, one of them will run Identity Governance, one of them will run Identity Portal. You drag and drop, you click deploy, anywhere between 10 to 8 to 20 minutes. Regardless of how many servers you have, everything is going to be up and running, ready to go, fully integrated between them. You don't need to worry about cluster configuration. You don't need to worry about application configuration if it's provisioning directory or user store. Everything is up and running, ready to go. If you want to add more servers in the future to increase scalability, you just drag another machine in, you put the right component, deploy, a few minutes later, it's up and running. So, as I said before, the changes are tremendous. It also allows you to actually level set a lot of the other problem we saw in the field. For example, say right now you want just to play around with the solution. So we actually prepared a ready-made demo version of the solution with all the 3 products already fully integrated between them, Identity Manager, Identity Governance, Identity Portal. Everything's ready to go. Just click on the demo. It's deploying around 10 minutes. You have everything running. You can go in, or you can start deploying use case. You can start doing campaigns. You can start working with the identity portal. It's very, 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 very scalable. And if you look at the sandbox, custom, non-production, production, the difference between them is specifically how much resource you are willing to allocate. We predefined the performance tune-up necessarily for this type of installation. So for example, for production, we require that amount of memory, that amount of CPU, and it's already pre-configured in the solution, so you're going to get a good value from the system all the way to go. In the old days, in the standalone configuration, once you install the solution, we have to go in, configure JVM heap size, we have to configure a thread count, we have to configure anywhere, and a lot of stuff, open files, for example, in Linux. This is already pre-made for you, so you don't need to worry about it. If you do want to put your own customization, it's still available for you. As you can see in this slide, it's a drag and drop kind of interface. We just drag and drop specific components into a machine. You can add any machine you like. We click deploy, system takes care of it itself. You don't need to worry about it. It's pretty cool. And more importantly, once the system is up and running, you get a good indication what the status of the system. You know, it's a very minimal monitoring solution we provide. You know the service is up and running. You know you can have access to URLs. You can have access to system. You don't need to worry about saving your URL in a favorite kind of page and everything. And moreover, and I didn't mention this before, the solution is already coming with support for SiteMinder integration. So if you do have SiteMinder in your solution, you don't lose that ability. So let's go again to go over why the virtual appliance is such a good option for everyone. Excuse me. So first of all, lower licensing cost. You don't need to pay different licensing costs for different type of vendors. You don't need to pay IBM for WebSphere or Oracle for WebLogic or Red Hat for operating system. It comes built in. So the only requirement is that you provide an external database, which is still the same, but it's less problematic than you trying to provide the solution. The services cost, because you don't need to worry about installer. There's no complexity in terms of, oh, this install didn't work for me, I need to uninstall everything. No, if you have a problem, it's probably going to be a product problem, and we can provide you hotfix very quick, specifically for you. And if the service packs come out tomorrow, you're going to apply the service packs, and you're going to get all the fixes before. And of course, development. So we have a good monitoring. We have logging. You don't need to worry about capacity in terms of, oh, I need to spin up another machine. It's going to take me 2 weeks. No, you just plug in another OVA. You run the solution. You have a machine up and running. All right. So let's go back to our main issue here, or main discussion point. Why we want everyone to upgrade to our latest code branch. First of all, we have end of service notification, which is a huge incentive, I think, for customers. So everyone who's running the 12.6 GA towards 12.6.3 Identity Manager, or 12.6.2 in GM, and 1.6.1 in Identity Portal, end of service is coming really fast. And in 6 months' time, it's around the corner. So we recommend that if you have the ability to upgrade to either the latest code branch or on a newer code branch, preferably the latest on the 12.6 branch, you start having those discussion and understanding what is the requirement in order to upgrade. Because we understand that upgrade is not a simple process. Upgrade might change the way the product behaves. Upgrade might change. You need to change your business logic, but also upgrade has a lot of benefits because we improve the product offering. A feature that was not exist in 12.6.2 might exist in 12.6.8. That will streamline your business logic and product capability. Excuse me. And also will reduce the time to develop new solutions. So, for example, if you're running a 12.6.2 Identity Manager and you have a requirement to communicate with an external web service, in the 12.6.2 we didn't have that feature available in the solution. We either had to pay extra for a custom component, or you build your own solution. Starting with 12.6.5 and 6, we actually have those components available in the solution. So all of a sudden, you don't need to worry about, oh, I need to develop this feature or not. It's already there. So you save some money on that. from a fixed strategy support, as I mentioned before, because it's a very old version. So if you're running an older version, doesn't necessarily you're going to get the latest fixes. We will provide you the latest fix on the latest branch. And more importantly, if you're willing to be an early adopter for the latest version, especially in the virtual appliance, we love early adopters. We'll provide extra service and extra support if needed, and you're going to see a little bit more attention being done because we do want everyone to succeed. So let's pay attention a little bit on what is the usually frequently asked questions that I'm usually hearing about moving from a standalone to a standalone upgrade, which is, again, it's still an option, but we have to take into consideration the following items. So the first question is, which version should I upgrade to? So one of the first thing when I started the role 3 months ago, I started hearing a lot of misconceptions here saying, oh, I'm running in 12.6.2 branch. I have to go through the latest 12.6 branch. You have to go to 14. No. If you're running Identity Manager, Identity Governance, you can, in any 12.6 branch, you can go directly to the 14 branch. You follow the upgrade guide, and you don't need to go into a middle ground. However, if you are running an identity portal, that's the only component that will require you to do a mid-process upgrade. So for example, if you're running a 1.6.1 for identity portal, you will have to upgrade, so to speak, the solution to 1.6.2, and then you can go to 14. So that's a little bit more complexity that we understand that exists, but it's not that big a complexity in terms of changing. The big complexity is the second bullet I'm showing you here. And I mentioned this a little bit briefly in the past. More likelihood you're running in an older version of a platform. So are you either running an older version of your Windows solution, or you're running an older version of your database or application server, and starting from the new version in order to support new features and so on. We want to make sure that you're running on the latest and greatest. So for example, if you are a WebSphere shop, and you're running WebSphere 7, and we'll require that you upgrade into WebSphere 8.5.5 latest service pack, fixed pack, I'm sorry. WebLogic, if you're running 11, we will require that you go into WebLogic 12. And again, we understand that the infrastructure changes, and usually in this kind of changes, if your platform doesn't support, it's probably going to be a side-by-side. So bring me to the next bullet point. It all depends on this specific use case. If you don't have the right platform to run the solution, if you're running an older solution, a preferable side-by-side upgrade will be a better choice for you. We recommend that you open a support ticket and put a specific use case and specific scenario you're facing, and we can answer that specific. How can I be sure the hardware previous will work? That's a very, very good question. And the answer, the straightforward answer I will tell you is we made absolutely our maximum effort to make sure that all previous features are working. But if you do indeed find any problem, because you're running on the latest and greatest, it's going to be easy for us to fix it. As far as I understand, there's no lost functionality other than what is actually published in the release notes for deprecated endpoints or deprecated logic. But as I said, because it's a case-by-case on a scenario, I'll recommend that you open a support case, and we can answer this very quickly. When we talk about vApp upgrade and migration, is the number one question, can I upgrade to the virtual appliance? We want to say yes, but I want to put a big asterisk in it and say it's all depending on the circumstances. So for example, if you do have a solution that is a complicated solution, you're using in a Sun directory, which is our enterprise solution, using Oracle RAC, using WebSphere and for IDM, and it took you anywhere between 1 and 2 years to implement the solution, moving into the virtual appliance right now for the identity manager might not be a good idea, but on the other end, you can still migrate some of that logic into the identity portal using the virtual appliance or identity governance and use it. You're still using the standalone for IDM. You don't need to worry about changes or migration or anything like that. But you can still use it for our recommendation for the short term until such a time you can start working on migrating the solution into the virtual appliance. How much effort is involved migrating the virtual appliance? It's all per use case. So again, depending how complicated your solution is, how many attributes you're managing, how many endpoints you're managing, which is less problematic, that will drive the decision or the effort involved. So again, I will recommend that you open a support ticket or reach out to your account manager to see if we can do an health assessment and see if we can come up with some sort of a level of effort. in terms of methodology, it's going to be always a side-by-side, with the exception of customers who only use identity governance, identity portal. In that aspect, it's a side-by-side, but they can keep connect to the existing database. So that's the only methodology, because it's a different environment. Same question, how can be sure that all my previous logic will work? Same answer I gave before. It's the same version. There's no difference in the code base between the virtual appliance running a 14.0, standalone running 14.0. It's the same code base. We do not keep different code bases. We release the version and then it goes to the virtual appliance. We make sure that this is the case absolutely. So if, for example, if something got found in the standalone 14, it's going to get trickled down into the 14 the virtual appliance. That's all I had. So we have a few questions on the Q&A, and I would like to go over them. And Chris, you can maybe unmute the call, and we can talk about this with people. And let's go over the Q&A. So the first question is from Elaine McCrabb. I hope I'm pronouncing your name. Please show the exact link where you can find information online. Thank you. The links are available in the support. So what I'll do, I'll just go over and just show you real quick how to get to that information. Let me share my screen for a second.
And folks, if you'd like to ask a question using the audio, you can hit #6 or #6 on your telephone, and that'll unmute your line. Again, #6 will unmute your telephone line.
Okay, so there are several ways where you can find that type of information. First of all, we have the support, which is you can find all the documentation. I'll go back to this in a moment. But you can also go find the documentation inside our own DocOps. You can Google it, and you can see the end of service announcement is in the Identity Suite. It's just right here. You're going to get a direct link. You probably will have to log in order to view the page. So you just log into using your own CA. You're just using your own CA, and this is exactly the same type of information that I demonstrated in the presentation. And as the time progresses, if we have a new announcement for 14.1 end of service or anything like that, we will probably going to put this in excuse me, in the main page for the Identity Suite. However, if you do not find it, you can always go to the support side. Okay. You can find the product, CA Identity Suite. Okay. And I recommend that you use the Identity Suite just because it's the new name, and you can still find the product and then separate the identity governance, identity portal, but Identity Suite is where we're probably going to put all the information. So we have product release and support announcement, for example. Let me open it really quick. And we have specific announcement like GA availability and ever service and fixes, and everything is going to be in this page. But as I mentioned, probably the best bet for you is to go into the Identity Suite latest version and find this on the first page. So for example, if you go into the 12.6.8 branch and you see, okay, so this is 12.6.8 Identity Suite, and I go to Identity Manager, and I can see now all the cumulative release. So for example, now I want to see what is the latest cumulative release for 12.6H. I can see that it's already we have AP7, cumulative patch 8, I'm sorry. It just got released like 3 days ago. And we have instruction set how to install it specifically for each version. And you can also see, if you scroll all the way down, you have several other components. For example, we say this is the fix for the provisioning server, this is the fix for the connector server, and this is a fix for report server. So each component has specifically a patch, and this is how you can go in and get updates. You can, if you have any problem, you can always comment here, or we'll reply very fast. I hope, Elaine, I hope that answers your information. I can ask Chris to put this in when we publish it on the communities. I will make sure that we have direct links on that. All right. Next question is from Dirk Woywood. I hope I pronounce your name again. Can we add attribute to the user schema? Of course you can. So we provide you a basic user store schema with a basic object class and such, but there's always room to extend the schema to however attributes you want. You can add your own attributes. You can have your own object class. It's not a problem. It is something that is available. Any more questions on the line? Okay. If you need to unmute, you can do #6. You can ask the question, type in the Q&A. It will be a few minutes, and if not, I think that's it.
Any other quick questions, folks?
Okay. So I would like to thank everyone who took the time and be on the call. This is very important. Before I hand it back to Chris for summary, I just to make sure that as I said, my role is to make sure the upgrade process and lifecycle experience is something that you have in a good way, experience in a good way. If you feel there's any problem, don't feel free to mention my name in a support ticket, and the support team can know how to reach me. And if there's any specific problem, I will be very happy to and gladly help you if needed. Chris, back to you.
Thank you, Itamar. Thank you, everyone, for participating today. Again, we are recording, so the recording will be posted to the site, and everyone who attended will get an email with a copy, or actually a link to the recording. So, again, thank you, Itamar. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and that concludes today's session.